behalf of Fangoria. We wanted to reach out directly to all the readers and fans around the world. I know this year has been a lot of crazy for a lot of us, but wanted to focus on how we can be of help to the community and also offer some assistance. Creatively, there's stuff that I lean on to help me get through my creative businesses and things like that. And Josh and I had a wonderful idea for a panel, wanted to reach out to him and get everyone involved. And here we are.
Thank you very much, Tara. I want to first thank you and Jessica for using the Fangoria platform to spread the awareness of how important mental health is. I think it's really amazing. And to kind of touch on what you just said, I think mental health sort of has this taboo relationship when people think about it. They think that the idea of mental health is just something that you focus on or acknowledge whenever you're going through some sort of crazy crisis. And that's not the case. I believe, and I think all of us here believe, that mental health is just like physical health. It's just like financial health, your relationships. It's something you should always be working on and trying to get sharper and better. It's something that if you ignore, just like the other things, the stress compounds and it ends up turning out very bad for you. So, for lack of better terms. So, like you said, I like that you said that there are certain things that you turn to. There's a lot of things people kind of use for to practice good mental health. Personally, I use a type of meditation called transcendental meditation. I have the great honor of working with the David Lynch Foundation in LA with their regional director, Lynn Kaplan. And so that's something that I know a lot about. It's something that has actually helped me connect with a lot of the people on this panel. And so I'm really excited to be here. I know that everyone on this panel also uses meditation. Not necessarily everybody uses transcendental meditation, but use some form of meditation. And it's exciting to have everybody here and sort of talk candidly about why we do that, how we do it, when we do it, and just sort of try to tear down this, taboo idea that people seem to have about mental health and about meditation. So I would love to start, we'll keep this very casual and whatever. The last thing I want to do, and I remember talking with you, Tara, in the beginning, we don't want people to think like this is some sort of crazy religious cult that, you have to sign up and join, especially with TM. So many celebrities do it that I think people write it off as maybe this, just fad or whatever, but it's been around forever. The Beatles, have, famously went to India and learned how to do TM. And so it's been around for a very long time and it's helped, millions and millions of people. And so I just want to keep this sort of in that vein and let people know why we're doing this and kind of what to expect. So Amy here, who you Fangoria fans might recognize from Twin Peaks: The Return, she played Candy, the best character on Twin Peaks: The Return, with the best wardrobe and most amazing scenes. I'm sure you're tired of me telling you that, Amy. But I got to meet Amy through the David Lynch Foundation. And so, we have meditated together, and I think your story, Amy, is unique maybe to this group, but is super relatable to a lot of people who will be watching this. And so I would love to just sort of hand the mic to you and let you just maybe talk in a sort of a broad sense about how you found meditation and what it means to you.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for that lovely intro. I'll never tire of you flattering me. That's absolutely fine. Bring it on. I must apologize in advance. I have a terrible chest infection. It's not COVID, but I'm coughing nonstop for the past 3 weeks. So
you apologize to your friend. You don't have to apologize.
Yeah, Christina. Christina is. We play sisters on a show called The Detour, and we're still pals now. and helping each other on a bunch of work things today. So I've wanted to talk to her about getting into meditation without hammering it too hard home. And, you know, we're both experiencing a lot of intense things during this time, like everyone is. And, you know, my answer to her when we've been talking about things, some crazy things that she's been going through in her personal life, I've been saying, you know, I'll listen, I'll give some space there for her to chat, but I'll be like, I can't wait till Lynn has time to teach you TM, because I think you're going to be a very different person when you learn how to do this. So how I ended up getting into it, a dear friend of mine here, when I first moved to LA, is a big practicer of TM, and he had given me a basic, he's a big yogi, and he had a basic mantra that he would tell people at his yoga classes and things. And I don't know, you're not supposed to do it that way, but I did that with him a couple of times and it felt very powerful. So then if I would go to, I'm Catholic, but if I would go to like a church here, a Catholic church, I would just sit there and try it out. And it just felt incredibly moving to me. And I don't see it as a spiritual thing at all. I see it as very much a scientific approach to calming your mind, just like going to the gym works out your body. I think of the science of it, and it's basically just a workout for my brain. I just happen to find the church area very quiet and a nice safe space. So that was kind of my intro into it. And then when I was shooting Twin Peaks, you'd see David doing it a couple of times a day, and then you'd see a lot of the crew, and they were all very alike. And the casting director, Joanna Ray, she's a big transcendental meditation person. She would never talk about it. She doesn't ever talk to even me about it, but I just know that she did it. She'd mentioned it when I brought it up with her once. She's like, oh, I've been doing that for 40 years. You know? So I just loved her vibe. And I think they're all very similar. There's a feeling on his set from the crew, which is very different to other sets that I've been on. And they all just kind of get it. I can't explain it. And I think once you learn it, you start gravitating toward other people that do that. So I talked to David about it, and he suggested, you know, that I meet up with Lynn and he had originally said it was because I get chronic migraines, and he was thinking it's going to save that, it's going to help your anxiety, your depression, it's going to help all these things. I mean, it didn't help my migraines at all. I mean, it didn't have any effect on my migraines. However, it did have a significant effect on my anxiety levels and my stress levels and how I deal with things. I would be a pretty relaxed person anyway by nature, but I found, and I like stoicism, like I'm a big fan of that. I mean, I didn't even know what it was until recent years, but I think I'd naturally have been more practicing stoic. So I think this is very similar to that. It's just about letting, you know, all the troubles will happen, but you just kind of live through it. So and I think with meditation, I'd struggled with any of the breathing technique ones before, because it would suddenly like, because I'm treated now for anxiety, depression. I hadn't been for many, many, many years. So I didn't know what it was, and I was very shameful of it. And I found whenever I did breathing technique things, I would be like, just focusing on my breath, and I can't breathe, you know, freaking out. But then with doing this, it's so simple, because what I love about TM is you're not stopping your thoughts. You're allowing those thoughts. It's like you're like a computer downloading lots and lots of information, you know, and it's like all this happening. And so during the meditation, you can be hyper aware. I mean, that's my experience of it, but it's the aftermath of it. It's like, oh, and then in life, everything is kind of like this. So you're kind of learning how to take it as it comes, you know, like you just accept it. Like that's how it is. And, it's really helped me through this. I'm also sober. I haven't drank alcohol for 8 years now. And I go to, there's a us at the DLF, the David Lynch Foundation, that get together for a meeting once a week. We haven't recently because of quarantine and COVID. But how it has affected the people there in the room, and that's everything from directors, producers, to veterans, to homeless people, to like a nice mix, and all of their stories have been hugely humbling, and you just feel that connection. And I shot a film last year with Dwayne Dunham, who is David's editor. He's also a director in his own right, and David was one of the EPs on it. And a lot of the same crew were involved, and it was that same thing again. And I found myself, whenever madness is happening on set, like you can, actually I think when we were filming too, someone had said like Amy's always away on her own somewhere.
I
like
would notice you meditating. Yeah,
I would just be off on my own, or even if I'm not meditating, like I generally kind of distance myself because I just don't want the noise. I need to be kind of in that note. And I would notice that Bill Borden was one of our producers, and they go way back too. And he actually practiced, I think, with the Maharishi years ago with his wife. And we would find ourselves in similar areas of the set, and all craziness was happening over there. We were just kind of like, no, just let it happen. And I find life now, I'm kind of gravitate towards people who do that, because I suppose people who invest time into that and want to learn, want to cut out the noise and don't project their crap on you. And they want to just, they know everyone's going through a hard time at different times in their life. And it's just a really good tool.
I love that. What an answer. That's great. So what I think is great about your answer is that you're a working actress and you use it in that creative field. And I think it's great for people to realize, and we realize it more with social media and stuff, but like a lot of people watching this don't get to live the amazing life of working in the movies, and everybody here in one way or another does that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is all of us have stress and things that haunt us. And like you had mentioned, being sober, and it's all very relatable stuff. And it's not like there's some magic pill out there that helps celebrities that, non-celebrities can't get to. It's mental health. It's taking care of yourself. And you found that TM does that for you. And I think that's amazing. Yeah. And so I think you and I are the only ones in this group that practice TM specifically, which is cool, because I know I talked a little bit with Vanessa. I'm interested in hearing how you use meditation, because you if you don't know, Vanessa works with Bloody Disgusting, and she's on every red carpet of every movie that I wish I had been a part of and wasn't. And she's just an icon. She has a new show that just came out, and she's amazing. But if you're watching this on Fangoria, then you know who she is, so I don't need to tell you. But I'm interested in hearing, Vanessa, how you use meditation, because we really didn't talk about it yet. How do you use it in the crazy world that you live in?
Yes, totally. Well, thank you for that lovely intro. Yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's like mental health could literally be anything. It could be financial, relationships, your job, friends, family. And I think that everybody has a different way on how they deal. So like you said, you're 100% correct. I am not sitting there practicing TM, but I know a lot of people that do, and I'm not against it. My mom does it. She always sends me every morning, especially since the pandemic. She always sends me a video, and she's like, this one was so good. They're just like YouTube ones, and she's like, this one was great. Because she always goes to yoga, and she's like, try this one. This one's super fun. And I'm always like, yeah, those ones were really good. So occasionally, like, I'll click on the ones that she sends, and I'm like, that was really refreshing, But for me personally, like, how sometimes I deal with things, because yes, I'm an earthbound creature. So for most of the time, I'm pretty like grounded and I'm easy breezy. But again, I'll get wonderful gifts of anxiety and little waves of depression and just stuff like that throughout the course of days, weeks, whatever. And for me, so like I said, I think it's a lot of, and Amy, you were saying it, like breathing techniques, which sometimes like anxiety will give me shortness of breath. So it's actually hard to sit there and practice and be like, okay, just take it all in and take a second and like concentrate on it. And I also have another funny story. Like when I was younger, my grandma, like when I was in high school, I used to like, again, I was a worrywart. I was an overanalyzer. I was just worrying about nonsense, And she'd be like, my grandma has like a really thick Salvadorian accent. She'd be like, Vanessa, come here. And she would literally be like, give me your hand. And I'm like stressing out about whatever. We're in high school. It's probably dumb shit. And she would put an ice cube in my hand. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I'm like focusing on this ice cube. And she's like, and I'm like so distracted by the fact that there's like this ice cube in my hand. And I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, so I'm just saying that I think it's like easy to like focus on something else other than the problem. And I know a lot of that time is like easier said than done, because when you're being dominated by something that is plaguing you, whether it is stress or just troubleshooting, it could be absolutely anything. For me, like I said, personally, I just like to take a minute and be in kind of some silence. I like to listen to certain music. Again, I do concentrate so much on the breathing because it does help my heart rate, like settle me out, you know? And again, sometimes you're so wound up in your brain that it's like refreshing to just, again, take a step back and be like, okay, let me collect it all. Let's come back, you know, let a little dust settle and you could readdress something. Cause I feel like that's sometimes everything everybody needs is just let a little dust settle, you know?
Mm.
And it's like you were saying too, like it's taboo. Everybody thinks you have to sit there and be like doing in a Indian style formation of meditation, but there's just so many different things people can do and techniques. It could simply be like you sitting in a rocking chair drinking tea. Like there's so many things that work different for people. So, but that's me.
Yeah. No, I love that. I say that all the time during our calls that I do, you know, the weekly calls with the David Lynch Foundation. And, you know, it's funny when people first join because they don't realize that they can do that. And you're exactly right. You don't have to be sitting on a rock in the mountains overlooking, you know, a bunch of valleys with your, you know, your hands like this. And if that works for you, great. But it's like it's become sort of Instagram worthy, if you will, for people to post that stuff. And so I think that's why it takes on this this quite frankly false identity. And you mentioned something that I really love, which is you said clearing the dust and sort of getting rid of the noise. And Amy, you mentioned it too. And I find that that's a very common sort of explanation. And without getting too nerdy, I promised you I wouldn't, Jessica, without getting too nerdy behind the science of it, that's what's happening. So when you're meditating, and again, there are different types, so I don't want to speak to everyone, but I know TM very well. And when you're doing transcendental meditation, you are given a mantra that you're given by an instructor that is personal to you. And so this is a sound or a word that has no meaning to you whatsoever before you hear it. And so when you're saying this mantra, and I assume it's just like Vanessa, you're talking about when you're listening to music, or I've heard people say that they, you know, washing dishes is meditative for them or mowing the lawn or whatever. What happens is when you're saying this mantra, you're actually quieting the mind. You're reducing stress because, like you said, you're blocking out. I don't want to say blocking out, but you're not focusing on the stressors in your life. And then the ultimate benefit that I love and why I do the weekly calls that I do is because you're waking up the creative centers of your brain. And that's something that I really try to educate people on the most is mental health is important because if you don't take care of it, that stress is, you know, it's going to compound and compound and compound and compound. I just said the other day to somebody, it's like somebody who's really into money and finances. I said, okay, you put $100,000 in a savings account that has a really high interest rate and you don't touch it and you come back in 10 years and it's grown. It's a lot more money. Well, stress does the same thing, but it's not as exciting when you acknowledge it 10 years later.
Mm.
So you have to stay on top of it. You have to keep working on it. And when you do that, you are, you know, you're quieting your mind. You're getting in touch with what is actually underneath all the stress, because we are not made up of stress. You know, there is a creative person in all of us. And when you can, like I said, when you can wake up the creative centers in your brain, that to me is the ultimate trifecta of why I love to meditate. And it's not a magic pill. It's not something you can just do when you want to. You have to be disciplined. You have to, that's why they say you're practicing meditation, because you get better at it and you get better at slipping into the meditation. You get better at saying your mantra. You get more comfortable with whether or not, you know, when I first started, I would like shut the door in my office and tell everybody to leave me alone. Like somebody, I'm like embarrassed if I'm sitting there with my eyes closed for 20 minutes, looking like more of a creep than I already look like, because the rest of my house is not decorated like this. Now I'm just like, I'll do it wherever, you know, and it's, you just get more comfortable with it. And so I think you find yourself doing it more often and regularly. And when that happens, Ryan, you can relate to this. When you work out, all right, when you're lifting weights and stuff, you can't just do it you know, every once in a while and expect to be in shape. It takes work and it takes discipline. And before you know it, after a while, you're like, oh, wow, I'm noticing a difference. You know, it's not going to happen right away. But it does happen. And so I love that there's science behind this. And I love that everything everyone says is basically their own experience of how the science works, even if they're not pointing to the science and why. They're pointing to a reason, and that is always backed by science when it comes to using meditation for mental health. So, Ryan, I'm going to now, I would love if everyone knows who Ryan Turek is, works at Blumhouse, VP. This guy, I don't know how you do it, to put it simply. I was just talking to a friend today about doing this, and I was like, hey, do you know who Blumhouse is? And he was like offended. He's not a horror fan. But he's like, yeah, I know Blumhouse is. Well, I don't live under a rock. I'm like, all right, well, I'm talking to the guy there. And I started talking to him about how Blumhouse seems to be putting out 4 movies at a time every time I get on Instagram. And I can't imagine what that's like and the stress that comes with it, because people see that, they see Ryan Turek and, you know, respected and admired by everybody, including myself, and you have this great reputation in the industry, but there's stress that comes along with that I think people don't take the time to think about. And so I invited Ryan to call into one of our meditations at the David Lynch Foundation, and he did, and we talked a little bit about that. But I would love to just sort of hear, because I don't think you practice TM specifically regularly, do you?
Mm-mm. No, I didn't. It wasn't until you and I started actually talking and we were having little side chats on Instagram, but, and you had reached out at just such a great time, because this year has been incredibly tough. It's been tough on everybody. You know, we're all indoors. Our brains are constantly churning on all sorts of different stresses. And I think there was like one particular week, it was just really rough. And you had reached out and were like, hey, you should try this, you know? And I kind of went in, I kind of went in the same way I went into my first yoga course at the beginning of production on Halloween Kills. Quite embarrassing, but I did it anyway, because I was just kind of trying to follow along and keep up. But thankfully, you know, your smooth, velvety voice, Josh, and the guidance was fantastic. But yeah, you know, there was an experience I had probably about 20 years ago, where I was doing some early film work, and I had a full-on like panic attack, and I didn't know how to tackle that. And you know, it just kind of sent me down a spiral of like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? What's going on? And I kind of wish that I had, you know, the education and the toolkit to be able to handle that, because maybe I wouldn't have, you know, left town and tried to pursue other arts. But you know, I moved back, you know, shortly thereafter, and I think it was, you know, when we talk about meditation and everything that's been, you know, there were so many keywords that have come up in this conversation that I relate to, especially refreshing. Refreshing is one thing that I garner from the experience. And it was on it was on Halloween 2018. You know, David, when you work with a filmmaker, you know, it's like any relationship. You know, you're kind of like sussing each other out. You're trying to figure out personality traits and all that kind of stuff. And David and I got along really quick, and I discovered that he meditated a lot. And I would discover that like after like some production meetings, you know, he'd just close the door. You know, he had this mat that has like all these kind of like spikes in it that we would like kind of lay on. And I pulled him aside and I was like, you know, is it beneficial? Is it helpful? And he was like, dude, totally, it just evens me out. And I was like, that's really fantastic. And kind of tabled that thought of trying it. And then someone had kicked Headspace my way, and they said, you should try Headspace. And so I was like, okay, great. And cut to you know, early scouting on Halloween Kills. We were in North Carolina, and we were just spending a week in North Carolina, in Wilmington, just driving around looking at spots. And I said, you know what? since I'm living the hotel life for a week, let me try this out. You know, you have no, you know, I have 2 dogs, I have a family. You don't have all the kind of intrusions and stuff like that to kind of draw you away. And I was like, let me try this. And every morning I did it. Like I was just kind of following along a Headspace. And I was finding that my disposition and my stress were kind of balancing out nicely. There was a lot of value positive effects to it. And I kind of, and when I got back to town, I tried to stay as close to it as possible, like, you know, in terms of routine. You know, you bring up the gym. The gym is my way to de-stress, regardless of, you know, whether I'm having a bad week, a good week, if I'm eating like an asshole and counter, you know, being counterintuitive to all the, you know, the effects that I want. It's my way of just kind of getting out of the house and just kind of focusing on something. So when I got back to the office, I would try to disappear into the Blumhouse theater that we have and kind of like just kind of zone out for a little bit. But it wasn't until we were in principal photography on Halloween Kills that I full on went into it. And it was my way to de-stress. You know, if we were shooting, I would kind of disappear for 20 minutes into the trailer during a lunch break, just to kind of like calm down for a second, or just get your head into it. Kind of like you look at it like a filing, like a file box. You know, you don't maintain it. Files are everywhere. There's fucking files in here and files in the wrong files and papers everywhere. And I found that it just kind of balanced the thoughts out and made me focus on, okay, for the rest of the day, I need to do this, 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 and this. And it was also a great de-stress tool when you're pulling all-nighters and you get back to the hotel and your brain and your heart is still going. Because then I would just like kind of lay in the hotel bed and turn on Headspace and either be guided through something or listen to cool groovy sounds or just the sounds of rainfall. And I actually found, strangely, that there's one aspect of Headspace where it's like, are you having a hard time falling asleep? Try this. And literally it is like counting sheep. That's basically what it is. It's like, find a number and then slowly count backwards from it. And it works every single time for me now. So if I have like, if I can't go to sleep, I'll just go 666,000, and then I'll start counting backwards, and I'm out in 5 seconds. and what I noticed too is that I get deep sleep, I get good sleep, and that's always important, because if you can't recharge, then you're just doomed. You know, I find that it's just refreshing and it just recharges the brain. And you know, and you've been so helpful too in terms of guiding me on the TM journey. And like I found myself kind of getting distracted by work stuff, but I keep telling myself to keep investigating and keep going deeper with it. So I'm gonna try to do that.
I love it. I didn't realize that you practice as much as you do. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's been, now that we're not on set and we're not racing around, I'll try to find quiet moments in my office, after either a long day of work or, if there's a particularly stressful week or anything like that. So Headspace has been very beneficial. And I've had moments where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't used it for a month or two, and I kind of feel bad. But I have this pebble my kid gave me, and I got to like the chapter in Headspace where it's like find a rock to focus on. So I'm waiting to see what this fucking rock is going to do for me. I keep it right here in front of me, so I know that when I'm ready to jump into that level of meditation, of focusing on something, it's right there. So
that's awesome. So I think it's you bring up something that is kind of a loaded question, but you answered it, which I love, and that is, I love to ask people what would happen if you didn't take care of your mental health, if you didn't, meditate. And you answered it. You said you had a nervous breakdown and tried to change.
Yeah.
Was it change careers? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I thought, because it was just one of those experiences that I was just like, is this all worth it? Like, am I making the right choices? But but it's not like some Cronenbergian brood thing where you start manifesting growths and stuff like that. You're not going to start spitting out the brood, but it does have an effect on, your health. I think, you become lethargic and you start to spiral, and you just want to there are moments where we all stressed out and all you just want to do is lay down, and some people don't understand that that is a totally natural thing to do, and you should probably take that time for yourself. We've had throughout this year, we've had a lot of moments where, at Blumhouse, where they're just like, if you need mental health day, take it. Just take it, because they completely understand that I'm no good. I'm worthless if I'm just sitting there going like this,
Yep.
So it's really important to just take care of yourself. And either that's bicycling, running, doing something. I always recommend physical activity. It's the best thing to do.
Yeah. I love that. Everybody take note. Blumhouse gives people mental health days. All right.
Yeah.
That's very important. It's incredible. My dad is a truck driver, nowhere near, working in the entertainment industry. And he was nervous to tell his boss, with everything going on, he wanted to just take a mental health day. And when he finally built up the courage to tell them, they were like, mental health day? What the hell is wrong with you? You're a truck driver. You put your big boy pants on and get out there and drive the truck, son. And it's like, it's not, and he works for a very, very, very well-known large company, but that's the idea is, real men don't do that. Real men just deal with it. And it's insane because like you just said, and that's it, is you can't give all of your talent, your abilities, your time, your attention, if you're being bombarded and, this stress is compounding on you. It's just, to me, it's basic math. It doesn't add up. But I think that's great.
I'm going to chime in on that note. So that's a huge, huge reason why I was okay with using our platform for this is regardless of who we are as people, we're all facing similar challenges or having, similar issues. And it's not okay to pretend everything's okay, or you shouldn't have to feel like you can't ask for that day, or that, I as a boss can't give that day. I will always give that day. But really just normalizing this and being able to talk about it and not be behind a brand or wall or company or whatever kind of personality, forward-facing thing that we have. Like Ryan and I know each other from the business. I didn't know this about you, and thank you so much for being able to share that with everyone. I think that's the thing is it's okay to source help, find what works for you, regardless if it's meditation or, I really like sound bath. I listen to singing bowls every night. That's sort of like my version of Headspace. And music too, if whatever it is, it doesn't, also I know everyone's hurting right now financially, if you can't afford therapy or you can't afford the tools, right? There's so many free yoga things on YouTube, Josh, you do your thing every week. It's there's so many tools that we have. So I just want to encourage everyone to just find what works for you, even if it's just a friend, Amy and Christina, you guys are friends and you guys came together to do this. You just find a buddy or whatever it is. It's this is okay. And these are healthy conversations that we're having.
Yeah. And I was going to say, thank you to Tara and especially Josh. I mean, I've been going through old Fangorias all through this quarantine stuff. And it's so great to see how far the magazine has come in terms of evolving. So even to welcoming this platform to have these conversations, because you're right. I mean, we're meeting so many horror fans who are going through so much, and readers and all of this stuff. I mean, even if you're not in the business, everybody's going through something, and they don't have the effective tools to deal with it, so hopefully this helps.
Yeah.
Tara, I would love. What was that, Amy?
Oh, sorry.
I said I really like what you bring up there, and I think it's about discussing it. And I think I mentioned when I was talking, shame is a thing. And I've recently just got back. I was filming in Ireland for 3 months just now, and the difference between how people talk about mental health here and how they talk about it in a Catholic repressed society like Ireland, we've got a long way to go. And what I wish people, when we're talking about mental health, I wish we would expand on what that means. Because when you say mental health, I think, and stress, I think people just think of the sexy, like, not that it's sexy, but like the easy on the ear depression, anxiety. But there's psychosis and there's other things. And I've got someone very near and dear to me who is now lost to us forever. She's alive, but she's not the person I thought she was, because she's seeing things all around her. And that has come from a mental illness that was not diagnosed early and is now turned into, with lack of sleep coupled with stress of other personal things in her life. We don't know what it is, if it's schizophrenia or if it's all those other things. So mental health is not just that one statement. It is myriad things. And I think it's kind of looked over because stress doesn't sound like the big killer that they say it is. It destroys families. It destroys people. It is not just a little bit of anxiety or feeling down and, like how we describe, like when I'm depressed or whatever, I just need to lie down and sleep for a while or things like that. Like I feel blessed that that's the level that I only have anxiety, depression, because the other things that can escalate to with lack of sleep and fear of what's going on right now and paranoia, and then conspiracy theories and things like that. And I think people who never even thought of conspiracy theories before are suddenly now being inundated with ideas. Like I have a dear friend of mine who's hugely educated and wonderful, genius pal, very successful in their work or their line of work. And she's spinning conspiracy theories to me. And because I'm so used to her being just this normal pal, at the start of COVID, she started spinning these conspiracy theories to me. And I was kind of, in a minute, not realizing that's what she was doing. And now that it's gotten worse and worse, and I'm watching different things that she's posting about, I'm like, that's someone that's spiraling into some kind of weird psychosis here. Like I think there are broader aspects of mental health that we need to look at and really bring up the discussion and talk to each other. Because if it's in a family, it's generally going to be throughout the family. And especially in a country like Ireland, or those places where, and maybe other parts of America that aren't as open-minded maybe, or as hippie as some of us are in the bigger cities, we need to be able to talk about it and it be a discussion. Like that's an issue, and not be embarrassed about it. Like I've got people I know very dear to me that know this person that they're uncomfortable talking to their kids about this person having it. And it's like, well, the kids are going to know because everyone in the town can see it. Like she's crazy right now, and they won't talk about it. And that came from, and I was doing a lot of research on it, and even something as simple as lack of sleep. If you're not getting enough REM sleep, proper sleep, your body doesn't go through the dreams that you need to have to generate the scientific terminology for it, I'm losing it now, but deliver the chemicals out of your body that you need to just reprogram the next day. Yep. And so then you're building up too much cortisol in your system, and then you're living like that. And I think it's really great, Ryan, that you discussed your breakdown. I also did 10 years ago, a pretty serious breakdown, and I never want my mind to feel like that again. I never want to feel like I don't have control of my mind, because it's terrifying and it's crippling in every area of your life. And I think ultimately it makes you a better person, you have more empathy. But really for me, the big thing is, and maybe it's because I go to 12 steps, like realizing what shame is and cutting that out of the dialogue. I would never say words like you should be ashamed or this or whatever, because even little sentences like that are making it a discussion we don't talk about. So thank you so much, Josh, for inviting me on here, and for all your pals here as well. Like all the things you're saying is wonderful. I'm really supportive of this.
I love, sorry to hear about your friend, first of all. That's very scary. And,
one of many.
It's, but I think what, you're saying, it's important to talk about it. And I think that there's two reasons for that. Number one, it's let everybody know, like, this is happening. This is okay to talk about. This is not some big dark secret.
Yeah.
But then the other side is for the person going through that, I find, and I was this way, is I would have crippling anxiety and was afraid to say anything to anybody because I was like, they're going to think I'm crazy. So that in itself, you're dealing with the initial compounding that got you to that point, whether it's being inundated by the conspiracy theories, the fear, work, stress, family relationships, whatever it is that eventually gets to that point. And then you're at the door where it's time to say, hey, I need help. Something's not right. I don't feel right here. But you won't open the door because you're like, on the other side is a bunch of people who are going to judge me and think I'm crazy, or, I don't want to be hopped up on pills and whatever. And so I think, it's, Tara, you've said it a million times. Jessica, we talked about it just the other day. It's just normalizing mental health. And you're so right, Amy. Mental health is not just, I'm stressed because I don't know what my Roth IRA is going to do under a new president or not. It's so much bigger than all of that. And it just needs to be normalized,
Yeah, elaborate on the specifics, I think.
Yeah. And make it okay to talk about, because it's going to happen. Just talking about it isn't going to get rid of it, but it's going to, And I don't know if you're all familiar with the Gus Van Sant film Milk, starring Sean Penn, one of my favorite movies ever. And there's a scene in that where someone had written Harvey Milk a really terrible letter, like hate mail, like threatening to kill him, I think. And I believe it was his partner that wanted to, didn't want him to see it, put it in a drawer. Don't worry about that stuff. And Harvey said no, and he hung it on the fridge. So if you put it in the drawer, it's going to manifest. It becomes this big scary monster. It's on the fridge. I can confront it. There it is. It's just a piece of paper after after a while. And I love that. And I think that that's what you're saying, Amy. Is that's where we need to get to, where it's just a piece of paper on the fridge. It's not this terrible. It can't do anything to you.
Also, it's like when you say you didn't want to say because they'll think I'm crazy. What's that fucking what if they think we're crazy? What's wrong with being crazy? Find that. I'm crazy. Like if you take away the shame and the embarrassment, there's just a conversation. Just accept us for who we are. It's not embarrassing if someone says they have cancer. I think people feel embarrassed if it's the colon or something. So what? Like, so let's just remove it. The more people are talking about it, then it's just normal.
People won't feel alone either, because the more people come out and talk about it, then you're like, you become a little bit more relatable. Like, because the feeling of feeling subjective, like, oh, I'm crazy if I start talking about this. It's like, actually, I'd say a lot more people than not are right there, so it becomes entirely relatable.
Yeah, that's the thing too is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's one thing that I personally struggled with before going to therapy and finding meditation is I have complex PTSD. And it's something that I didn't really want to talk about, didn't really want to let people know, because I always felt like I just should deal with it myself and internalize it, and I didn't need the outside world to know. I was presenting very bubbly and professional, and I throw myself into my work like we all do. And so it was always something I never wanted to talk about until recently, when everything just kind of started exploding in my world and, in all of our worlds. This year has been pretty awful. And after this summer, when just things were exploding, I really got into therapy, and I started doing guided meditations with my therapist, and she started talking about the things that I was experiencing, like, that's part of your PTSD, that's just part of it, and really normalizing that. And so now I felt more open to be able to talk about it, and I feel free in being able to talk about it, because I want people to be able to get to that point too. Like, stuff happens, people go through traumas, people have anxiety, people have depression. It's okay to talk about it. It shouldn't be taboo. It should be normal. We can discuss it.
Right.
I think it's a societal duty actually to talk about it. I think it's our duty to talk about it, because then other people will know the signs, and so that there's always, you're okay to talk about it, and this is normal, this is what is happening, and give specifics so you know what to look out for.
What were you going to say,
Yeah.
Ryan?
Oh no, I was just going to say, I mean, like that was the thing. It was like when I started using Headspace and started playing around with this, it would come up in conversations because we would, whenever we were, having weekend beers or whatever, and just kind of opening up, I would mention it. And 2 weeks later, either crew member X or another friend would go, you know what, I tried it. I think I'm going to get the hang of it. I tried like the 7-day trial or whatever. And that's the thing. It's like, I think it's just very helpful to just have an open conversation about it and lay it all on the table and see how everybody can help one another. I mean, like I said, and the other thing too, Amy, that you brought up was just the breathing. The breathing was so important. It's so insane. Like
Yeah.
I could, I mean, like it works really, really well, especially when it's guided. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's and again, I'm not going to speak too much about it because I'll be speaking out of turn, but Lynn at the David Lynch Foundation in LA taught me a lot about the breathing and why it, the different types of breathing exercise that you do and how it's actually forcing your brain to focus on just this one thing, and it'll balance out your equilibrium. And again, it's like there's a science to it, and that's why it works, and it goes a long, long way. Jessica, I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, how long has it been since you've been doing the since you started talking to, you said, your therapist and doing the meditations?
Yeah, so it really started in May of this year. I've attempted therapy on and off for the last several years. Like I said, I have complex PTSD and just have had a slew of traumas happen in my life. And around May, I just broke down. There was just so many things that were going on, work and being in lockdown and just everything in general. And I absolutely broke down. And so we had to start it virtually because we were all still in lockdown. But it still worked. And my therapist, we talk about things. We start every session with a meditation to get me into a place where I can feel very comfortable and just open up. And it's been so helpful that she even recommended Insight Timer, which is another guided meditation. I find that when I do a guided meditation and I have a voice talking to me and walking me through the steps, it's a lot easier for me to kind of grasp what's going on, because I do have a lot of anxiety. So it is hard for me to calm down sometimes, especially when I'm very stressed out or it's a busy day, or just there's a ton of triggers that happen throughout my life. So whenever I use a guided meditation, I feel like I've got someone holding my hand through the process, and then I'm able to calm down and breathe. The breathing, I'm just going to reiterate what everyone else said. The breathing is so true. Getting my breath under control and getting relaxed. Like, I'll start every therapy session where I'm just like this and my shoulders are up. As I'm breathing, I'm calming down, my shoulders relaxed, and then I feel like I can talk about things. So it's been very helpful.
I love that you start the therapy session with a meditation, and I love the way you just worded that. Again, it's what I was saying earlier. People give their examples of why it works, and it always comes back to the same science, which is that the reason that works for you, the reason you feel more relaxed after you do the meditation, is you've quieted the mind. You've gotten, the stress is not your focus, and that's who you are. The reason you're able to talk freely, as opposed to if you just walked right in the door and did it, is because you've taken that time. And that's so, so important. And people say, I don't have the time to meditate. I don't have 10 or 20 minutes a day. You do. Trust me, you do. Go in your iPhone and look up your screen usage for the week. And yeah, I promise you've got time to meditate. Tara, you said something earlier that I would love to hear more about. And I know everybody's probably antsy to we've been on here forever, and I could talk until tomorrow about this. But what I love is that everyone here does their own type of meditation. Everyone here does something that works for them. You mentioned sound baths. I am so unfamiliar with that. I want to hear about that. And I want to hear what else you do, because I know this is something you're very serious and passionate about.
Yeah, I really like singing bowls and sound baths. There's an amazing sound bath practitioner in Eagle Rock in LA. If you just Google like sound baths Eagle Rock, there's a woman who will pop up. Maybe we'll link to like a few sources for people when we post. But you know, I grew up playing music. I was classically trained playing violin, and I think that musical tones kind of sit more with my soul in a weird way. And then, you know, I've been in the film business my entire life. I've never actually worked outside of the film business. So for me, you know, there's that quote in Argo, which I know I'm not going to say this exactly, but, you know, Goodman says something along the lines of like, oh, we're like coal miners, like we get home and we just like can't wash it off. So early on in my career, I had to tell partners or friends like, hey, when I rap at night, like I need to be left alone for like, you know, a certain period of time so that I can just like bring myself back down. And I rarely get any personal time. It's just the nature of what I do. I'm running multiple companies right now, and there's just like a lot of transition, obviously, for me, you know, purchasing Fangoria with Abby and stuff like that. And so this year's definitely been stressful, but I just simply listen to like singing bowls. I know it's the strangest thing, but like that's what works for me. And it's similar to the sounds. This is going to be a weird example, but when you're like a little kid and you take like a crystal glass and you run your finger along, you know, the top of the glass and it makes that cool noise. It's a lot of that. It's not really a song or any sort of thing. It's just certain tones make me feel a certain way. And there's lots of different tones you can listen to for different things. You can Google all the tones. It's pretty easy to find out. I don't do very well with guided meditation. I do if I like the person's voice, but I have OCD, and so voices are like triggers for me. Everyone has their own stuff, right? So some Headspace guided meditations are easier for me than others. What did not work for me at all was I did the sensory tanks. I had like a panic attack 30 minutes.
I was going to say, I was actually going to bring that up.
Oh yeah. Oh hell no. That was like not something that worked in my body. I panicked like 30 minutes in. I was supposed to be in there for an hour. I did it in Pasadena. I think, I wonder if it's slow. It's called something.
It is.
Amazing place. Really great. Check it out. Did not personally work for me. I've probably never had that much quiet or aloneness in my life ever. And I think my body was just like, a little too much. Maybe in the future, I'm still open to try it again. But that was something that I was just like, oh no. That's what I'm saying. I think it takes everyone a while to find that thing. And that's okay. Like if something doesn't work for you the first time, if Headspace doesn't work, there's Calm. If Calm doesn't work, there's a million YouTube things. If that doesn't work, join Josh once a week. You know, it's like there's so many things that work for different people. But just be open-minded and know that it's okay if something doesn't work or doesn't sit right. I'm like a very energy type person. I'm not overly religious or anything like that, but I feed off of people's energies. And if there's a bad energy, I'm like, oh, nope, not doing that. So singing bowls is, like I said, just something that like fit with my energy and fit with what I like. I'm a weirdo. It's okay. I have crystals on my desk. I burn stuff throughout the day. You know, I love candles. I just, you know, it's like whatever works for you. And it's okay. You can also love Jesus and also meditate. Like it's not a religious thing. It's not a weird thing. We're not trying to shove anything down anyone's throat. It's like whatever allows you to calm your mind and reset your body and like reset yourself, because it's such a personal thing. It's like figure out whatever works for you and rock it and share that with people. I just think if people share it and talk about it, it becomes less of a taboo thing, less weird, and I don't know. And it's cool because it's the horror community and we're all involved in it in various capacity. And it's like, it's okay to like start there. Like if you can find a buddy or something like commonality, and I don't know, start there, ask people what works for them, try it.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, I'm glad you brought up the float tank because that was something that I tried when I was in Wilmington. My wife came out to visit and she was like, we need to try this thing. And I was like, oh, like altered states, because that's what they did in altered states. Except they brought in a lot of, you know, a lot of acid and mushrooms. But, you know, the first time, much like you, Tara, I mean, the first time I did it, I was like, I can't get comfortable because you're basically buck naked, floating in a solution of water and a lot of salt in a pitch black tank. And for those who are, you know, claustrophobic, it's a nightmare, you know. But you know, I kind of slipped into it, and and it was kind of weird at first, but then I just started bringing back all of the kind of like meditative practice that I was getting from Headspace and started applying it to that. So when I'm just sitting there floating, I was like, okay, why don't I breathe? Why don't I imagined, and I agree with you, Tara, some of the voices on Headspace are a little grating, but I imagined the fellow who always walks me through it, you know, I imagine his voice in my head taking me through like a guided meditation. I also tried cryotherapy, which
I loved that.
3 minutes of pure
also slightly
freezing.
Terminator-esque, but like loved it.
But it is something that, you know, it was both, obviously it's supposed to, you know, help you on a physical level in terms of muscle and, you know, and recovery and joints. But I mean, I just found myself exhilarated in my mind, like kind of refocused a little bit. So there's all sorts of shit out there. You just need to try and see what works for you.
Yep.
People can do ice baths at home. Like it's not cryo, but there's certain things like you just adapt. Like if you're stuck at your house and you're having a shit week, make a bunch of ice cubes in your freezer and like take a cold bath. Like take a cold shower in the morning when you wake up. Like shock yourself into something different. Like there's so many things that we can adapt for now. And if they want to try, because half these places are not open or not safe right now, so just figure out, you know, going back to figure out what works for you, adapt, be able to pivot, keep an open mind, find what works.
Yeah. Like share tips and tricks and everybody try them and what works for them. Perfect. And that's the thing, is like spreading the knowledge.
Yeah. It's, I love that. And I think that's a sort of the, no pun intended, the mantra of this call is, you need to do it. You need to take care of your mental health. It's not an option. You have to. At some point, you're going to really, really rely on that work, that investment of taking care of your mental health. How you do it is up to you. And there are a ton of different ways. Just the stuff that, you know, I didn't know about the floating in the tank. That sounds terrifying, but also I really want to try it now. You know, the sound baths, it's like that's not something that is in my world, but it makes, as you describe it, I'm like, yes, that makes sense to me. Sometimes if I'm too excited, I listen to Radiohead just to bring me down. Like music is so powerful, and to the word sound bath is just like, yes, give me a bath of sound. That sounds amazing. And, you know, like doing the meditations that Jessica does, doing TM, like, you know, like Amy and I do, or an app, whatever it is, just figure it out. And I love that you said that, Tara, that it doesn't have to work the first time. It doesn't have to work the first 10 times. I now am humbled that I get to work with the David Lynch Foundation. I'm humbled that I get to work with the people that I do there. I got, you know, to meet Amy, you know, working with Len Kaplan, who is just an absolute amazing creature that is from another planet, and she's on this world with us. It's mind-blowing to me. But for probably 6 years before I got to that point, I tried all these different apps. Some of the stuff you guys are talking about, I tried, and it did not work for me. It just didn't. So figure it out, put in the time, talk to people, you know, and if there is something that works for you, I think this is the other, you know, the second part of the theme here is talk about it. If you hear a new band that you love, you're going to tell people about it. If you taste food that you love, if you remember when we used to go to restaurants, with people. We would eat something and be like, oh my God, you have to try this. That's this, you know, like you said, Tara, it's not, you're trying to convince someone to join your cult, or you're not trying whatever. It works. We love it. We love this band. We love this entree. We love this. Please try it. You're going to love it too. And that's it, you know, and this has been amazing. There's been some absolutely amazing stuff said here that has educated me and inspired me to go search a little further into what else I can do. And you said it a little bit ago, Tara, but if anyone watching wants to try out TM, the weekly calls that I do are call in. They're not on video. You're muted the whole time. We have callers from all around the world. They're every Thursday. They're led by Lynn Kaplan. I host them. So we do a little talk in the beginning, and then she guides you through the meditation. And it's designed specifically for creatives of any field, you know, for any type of creativity. And it's turned into something really amazing. And I've got to meet some phenomenal people through that. So if you want to sign up, you can do it at my website, joshhasty.com/meditate. Or if you're watching this on Instagram, the link's always in my bio. And if you check it out and you don't like it, check something else out. And if you don't like that, keep checking out. But take care of yourselves. That's the most important thing. You can't afford not to. So that's kind of all I have to say. I want to thank Jessica for helping me arrange this thing, for Tara for thinking to do this. Ryan said it before, but it is so amazing that Fangoria is using this massive, respectable platform to do this. Like I can't even put into words how much I appreciate that. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ryan. It's always a pleasure to talk to all of you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Fangoria.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys for sharing. Really, really appreciate this. Wishing you all the best, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Tara.